You illiterate little whore, you can't even read. The slap echoed through Le Bernardin like a gunshot. 200 millionaires stopped breathing. Emily Carter's cheek burned red wine dripping from her hair. Her dead mother's fountain pen clutched in her shaking hand. Vanessa Grant, Mafia boss's wife. Manhattan royalty stood over her like an executioner, diamonds glittering under chandeliers. But Emily didn't cry. She smiled. Then she pulled out a napkin and wrote 5 words that would destroy a billionaire's marriage, expose a criminal conspiracy, and prove that the stupid waitress knew every secret in that room. Subscribe now. Comment your city. Watch what she does next. You won't believe it. The pen was dying. Emily Carter noticed it during her 5th hour of the dinner shift. Her mother's Mont Blanc, the one Mama had saved 3 years to buy, was running out of ink. She'd been using it to take orders all night because the restaurant's cheap ballpoints always smudged, and smudged orders meant angry chefs, and angry chefs meant no tips. No tips meant Dad didn't eat tomorrow. She shook the pen, gently coaxing out the last drops of ink when she heard the voice that would change everything. Is this establishment employing actual staff, or did they hire from a homeless shelter? Emily's blood went cold. She knew that voice. Every waitress in Manhattan knew that voice. Vanessa Grant. Emily turned slowly. She'd seen Vanessa before on magazine covers, charity gala, society pages, but never in person. Never this close. The woman was terrifying. Not because she was beautiful, though she was 52 years old and looked 35, blonde hair like spun gold, a face that probably cost more than Emily's entire education. Terrifying because of her eyes, cold, calculating, hunting for weakness like a shark tasting blood and water. You! Vanessa snapped her fingers. Actual finger snapping like Emily was a dog. Waitress. Emily's manager Pierre materialized from nowhere, his face pale. Mrs. Grant, how wonderful to see you. I didn't ask for you, Pierre. I asked for the help. Vanessa's smile was surgical. This one, the trembling little mouse. Emily wasn't trembling. Not yet. Yes, ma'am. Emily kept her voice neutral, professional, the way she'd trained herself over 8 years of swallowing rage for rent money. Bring me your wine list. The French wine list, not the pedestrian American garbage you serve tourists. Of course. Emily reached for the leather-bound sommelier's menu. Vanessa's hand shot out, gripping Emily's wrist. Hard, the kind of grip that would leave bruises. Did I say touch it? Vanessa's voice dropped to a whisper, but it carried. She wanted it to carry. I said bring it. Pick it up properly. Or can't you even manage that with those trailer park hands? The restaurant was going quiet. Table by table, conversations died. Emily's heart hammered, but her face stayed blank. I apologize, ma'am. I'll get it immediately. No. Vanessa released her wrist and stood up. 5'10" in Louboutins that cost more than Emily's monthly rent. I've changed my mind. I want to test something. She plucked the wine menu from the table and thrust it at Emily's chest. Read it out loud. Emily blinked. Ma'am, you speak English, don't you? Or did I assume too much? Vanessa's voice was honey and poison. Read the menu. Pierre stepped forward. Mrs. Grant, perhaps I could... Pierre, darling, if you interrupt me again, I'll have my husband buy this restaurant just to fire you. Vanessa didn't even look at him. Her eyes stayed locked on Emily. Oh, little mouse, read. Emily's hand shook as she took the menu, not from fear, from a lifetime of this exact moment over and over in different rooms with different rich women who all had the same message. You are less than human. She opened the menu. Chateau Margaux, 1996. Slower. Vanessa's smile widened. Sound it out. I know reading is so hard for your kind. Emily's vision blurred. She could see her reflection in the silver water pitcher, wine-stained uniform, exhausted eyes, the face of every working-class girl who'd ever been told she was worthless. Bouchard père et fils. Oh God, she's butchering it. Vanessa turned to the watching tables, performing her cruelty like theater. Did you hear that pronunciation? Père, it's P-H-R, you stupid girl. Laughter rippled through the room. Polite, uncomfortable laughter from people who knew this was wrong, but were too afraid of Vanessa's power to stop it. Emily kept reading. Bien grave vigne de l'enfant. The wineglass hit her face. Cold. Shocking. Expensive Bordeaux dripping down her cheeks, her neck soaking into her white uniform. Vanessa's hand was still extended, empty glass dangling from her fingers. Oops, she said. I'm so clumsy, but at least now you're properly dressed for your education level. Wine-soaked and pathetic. The room was silent now. Even the kitchen had gone quiet. Emily stood there dripping her mother's pen pressing into her palm through her apron pocket. Mrs. Grant, Pierre said weakly, I really must insist. You must insist on what Pierre, Vanessa whirled on him. That I pretend this illiterate child is capable of serving people who actually matter. That I ignore the fact that she can barely read a menu in her native language. She turned back to Emily. Tell me, sweetheart, did you even finish high school? Or did you drop out to pursue your thriving career in food service? Something inside Emily cracked. Not broke, cracked. Like ice on a frozen lake, the kind of crack that spreads in every direction until everything collapses. She'd spent 26 years swallowing this. From guidance counselors who told her college was unrealistic for girls like you. From her aunt who said her mother wasted money on books instead of teaching Emily to marry up. From customers who snapped fingers through food, screamed about cold soup and warm wine, and how dare you ruin my evening, you incompetent. From her own father in his worst moments, when the diabetes and depression made him cruel. Your mother died working herself to death for you, and this is what you became. A waitress. Emily had swallowed it all, but Vanessa Grant had just thrown wine in her face and called her illiterate, in front of 200 people. While Emily was holding her mother's pen, the pen Mama had bought with 3 years of saved tips, the pen she'd given Emily the night before she died, saying, education is the only inheritance I can give you, baby. Use it. Emily looked at Vanessa Grant and made a choice. You're right, Emily said quietly. Vanessa blinked surprised. She'd expected tears, apologies, cowering. I'm sorry, Vanessa said. You're right that I can't read this menu properly. Emily set it down on the table. Because I'm not French, I'm American. And in America, we don't usually pronounce French wine names with perfect Parisian accents unless we're... She paused. Unless we're what? Vanessa's eyes glittered. Unless we're pretentious. Emily's voice was still quiet, but it carried now. Or educated. The room held its breath. And you want to know something interesting, Mrs. Grant? Emily reached into her apron and pulled out her mother's pen. I'm actually both. She grabbed a white cloth napkin from the table. What are you? Vanessa started. Emily uncapped the pen and began writing. Her handwriting was precise, legal, the kind that came from 3 years of night school copying contract language, while other people her age were at bars finding themselves. She wrote for exactly 43 seconds. Then she turned the napkin around. Vanessa stared at it. Her perfect face went white, then red, then a sickly gray color that matched the Chateau Margaux she'd just thrown. That, Emily said calmly, is Clause 47, subsection D, of your prenuptial agreement with William Grant filed with the New York State Supreme Court on June 14, 2019. Dead silence. It's called the Public Misconduct Clause, Emily continued. It states that if either party engages in documented public assault, harassment, or defamation in front of minimum 12 witnesses, all infidelity protections are nullified and marital assets immediately enter mandatory financial review. She set the pen down. You just threw wine in my face, called me illiterate, and publicly humiliated me in front of... Emily glanced around, counting quickly. Approximately 214 witnesses. Vanessa's mouth opened. No sound came out. I know this, Emily said, because I'm currently studying high net worth divorce law at Hunter College. Your prenup is actually cited in 3 separate textbooks as an example of ironclad asset protection unless triggered by public bad faith behavior witnessed by a minimum threshold of observers. She pointed to the napkin. You just triggered it, Mrs. Grant. Congratulations. This is... Vanessa grabbed the napkin, her hands shaking. This is insane. You're making this up. Am I? A man's voice cut through the restaurant like a knife through butter. Deep, controlled, absolutely exhausted. William Grant stood in the entrance. Emily had seen his face on billboards, magazines, the sides of buildings he owned. But photographs didn't capture the way he commanded space, not through loudness or aggression, but through the simple fact that when he entered a room, everyone else became background noise. He walked toward them, 52 years old, silver hair, a face that had forgotten how to smile somewhere around his 3rd billion and never bothered learning again. Every eye in the restaurant tracked him like a predator. William Darling, Vanessa's voice went from vicious to honey in half a second. This is ridiculous. I was just teaching this girl some basic Clause 47D. William didn't look at his wife. His gray eyes were locked on Emily. Public misconduct with malicious intent. Minimum 12 witnesses. Nullifies infidelity protection and triggers mandatory financial review of all marital assets. He turned to Vanessa. She's correct. Word for word. Vanessa's face crumbled. You can't be serious. I watched from the entrance. William continued, his voice flat. You assaulted an employee, so I mocked her education. Threw wine in her face. My attorney watched. My business partner watched. And he gestured vaguely at the tables. About 60 people are currently uploading video to social media. Several guests quickly pocketed their phones. This is insane, Vanessa's voice cracked. Over some stupid waitress who correctly cited a legal clause from a 47-page prenuptial agreement from memory. William interrupted. While you were proving that money can't buy class, he finally looked at Emily. You study contract law. Emily's voice came out steadier than her hands. Night classes, Hunter College, paralegal certification program. While working here full-time, 2 jobs. Here in morning shift at the Marriott in Queens. She stopped, then added quietly, my father has diabetes. The medical bills are significant. William nodded once, a movement so small it was almost invisible. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call right there in front of everyone. Richard, William Grant, I need you at Le Bernardin immediately with the prenup files. Vanessa triggered 47D. Yes, I'm sure, because I watched her do it. Multiple videos, minimum 200 witnesses. Start the asset freeze tonight. He hung up. Vanessa looked like she might vomit. William, please, we can discuss this privately. We're done discussing anything. William's voice could have frozen the wine still dripping from Emily's uniform. This is the 5th public incident in 8 months, Vanessa. The charity gala, the country club, the shareholder dinner, the museum opening where you called the curator's wife ethnic trash. He pocketed his phone. I've had lawyers documenting every single one, waiting for you to cross a legal line in public. You finally did. Thank you for being predictable. Vanessa's face went purple. You planned this. I planned for this, William corrected. There's a difference. You chose to assault someone in public. I just made sure the consequences were ready when you did. He turned back to Emily, and his expression shifted, not soft exactly, but less glacial. You're shaking. Emily looked down. He was right. Adrenaline was tearing through her body like electricity. I'm fine, she lied. No, you're not. William pulled out his wallet, extracted a business card, and held it out. Take tomorrow off. Paid. Send your resume and a legal writing sample to this email by Sunday night. Emily stared at the card like it might explode. I don't understand, she whispered. You found a clause in my prenup that 4 different law firms missed during review, William said. That tells me you either got very lucky or you're very good at reading contracts. I'm betting on the latter. Mr. Grant, I'm a waitress. You're a waitress who speaks how many languages? 4, English, French, German, Spanish. And you study contract law while working 80-hour weeks to pay for your father's medical care. William's expression didn't change, but something in his voice did. I have a hotel acquisition deal closing in 6 weeks. $300 million purchase of a property chain in Berlin. My legal team swears the contract is clean, but the German sellers are too confident. Something's wrong, I can feel it. He tapped the business card still held between them. I need someone who actually reads instead of skimming for billable hours. Someone who gives a damn about finding problems instead of justifying retainer fees. I'm not a lawyer, Emily said desperately. I have 63 lawyers. What I need is someone with fresh eyes and actual motivation. He glanced at Vanessa, who stood frozen in rage. Send me your information. If you're half as sharp as I think you are, I'll hire you as a contract consultant. Part-time flexible schedule around your classes. $65,000 starting salary, full benefits, performance bonuses. Emily's heart stopped. $65,000. She currently made $19,000 between both jobs. Why? The word came out broken. William smiled, barely, just a twitch at the corner of his mouth, but it was there. Because my wife just humiliated someone for being working class and uneducated, and watching you humiliate her back with actual knowledge was the most satisfying thing I have witnessed in 6 years of marriage. He turned to leave, paused, turned back. Oh, and Emily, yes. That comment about the Chateau Margaux 2000 being superior to the 1996, you were absolutely correct. The 96 is overpriced garbage that pretentious people order to look cultured. He walked out. The restaurant erupted in chaos. Vanessa stood there shaking mascara, starting to run her designer dress, suddenly looking cheap under the lights. She looked at Emily with pure murder in her eyes. You have no idea what you just did, she whispered. Emily met her gaze. For the first time in her entire life, she didn't look away from power. I know exactly what I did, Mrs. Grant. She picked up her mother's pen, capped it carefully, and walked toward the kitchen. Pierre intercepted her at the door, his face pale green. Emily, you need to... I quit. She pulled off her apron, set it on the counter with the last bit of dignity she had left, and walked out the service entrance into the November cold. Her phone buzzed before she reached the subway. Unknown number. Your manager just called to fire you. I bought the restaurant. You're rehired as senior contract consultant effective immediately. Salary $85,000 per year, full benefits, flexible hours around class schedule. Report to Grant Holdings Monday 9 a.m. Dress code business casual. W. Grant. P.S. The Mont Blanc is a good pen. Your mother had excellent taste. Emily stopped walking. $85,000, full benefits, flexible hours. She looked back at the restaurant where Vanessa was probably still screaming. Then she texted back with shaking fingers, I'll be there. She walked toward the subway, her mother's pen in her pocket, and everything in her life suddenly impossibly different. Behind her, glass shattered. Vanessa's voice shrieked something about lawyers and lawsuits and, how dare you? Emily smiled. Let her scream. The quiet girl in the corner just learned something William Grant already knew. Knowledge isn't just power. It's a loaded gun. And Emily had been reading the manual her whole life. Emily didn't sleep that night. She sat at her father's bedside in their Queens apartment, watching his chest rise and fall with the mechanical rhythm of someone whose body was giving up piece by piece. The oxygen machine hummed. The insulin pump beeped softly every 4 hours. The medical bills on the kitchen table formed a stack 6 inches high. $85,000 a year. She kept thinking it, testing the words in her mind like they might disappear if she said them out loud. Her phone sat on the nightstand, William Grant's text message still glowing on the screen, even though she'd read it 40 times already. Emily. Her father's voice was weak, crackling like old paper. That's you, sweetheart. It's me, Dad. She took his hand. It felt like bird bones wrapped in tissue paper. What time is it? 3 a.m. Go back to sleep. Can't sleep when you're upset. His eyes opened still sharp, despite everything the diabetes had stolen from him. What happened? Emily almost lied. She'd gotten very good at lying over the years. Lying about how much money they had. Lying about whether she'd eaten dinner. Lying about being fine, always fine, everything's fine. Dad, don't worry. But she was too tired to lie tonight. I got offered a job, she said quietly. A real one. $85,000 a year. Her father went very still. That's not possible. It happened. Doing what? Reading contracts for William Grant, the hotel billionaire. Her father's hand tightened around hers. Emily, what did you do? She told him everything. Vanessa, the wine, the prenup clause, the look on William Grant's face when he realized she wasn't just a waitress. She was someone who'd spent 3 years studying the exact legal language he needed. When she finished, her father was quiet for a long time. That's dangerous, baby, he finally said. It's a job, Dad, a good one. That's not a job. That's a declaration of war. He coughed harsh and wet. Rich people don't forget being humiliated, and billionaire wives don't forgive. I don't care what, Vanessa Grant. You should. Her father's grip was surprisingly strong. I worked construction for 20 years. You know what I learned? The people at the top don't follow the same rules as us. They burn down houses to kill spiders. Emily swallowed hard. What are you saying? I'm saying take the job. God knows we need the money. He looked at the medical bills on the table. But watch your back, because that woman you humiliated tonight, she's going to come for you. Let her try. Her father smiled, sad and proud at the same time. That's my girl, stubborn as your mother. He fell asleep holding her hand. Emily sat there until sunrise, watching the city wake up outside their window, thinking about what it meant to win. Monday morning arrived too fast. Emily stood outside Grant Holdings at 8:47 a.m., wearing the only business suit she owned, a navy blue thing she'd bought at Goodwill for her paralegal program interviews. It fit okay if she kept the jacket button. The building was a monument to money. 63 floors of steel and glass in Midtown Manhattan, with William Grant's name carved in letters 3 feet tall above the entrance. Emily's hands shook as she walked through the revolving doors. The lobby was all marble and crystal chandeliers and people in $1,000 suits, moving with the confidence of those who'd never worried about rent. Security guards, receptionists with perfect hair, the smell of expensive coffee and leather briefcases. Emily felt like a fraud. "Can I help you?" The receptionist's smile was professional and cold. "I'm here to see Mr. Grant, Emily Carter. I have a 57th floor executive suite. He's expecting you." The woman's expression changed slightly, warming by maybe 2 degrees. "Take the express elevator." Emily rode up alone, watching the city shrink below her through the glass walls. By the time the doors opened on 57, her heart was hammering so hard she could hear it. The executive floor was quiet. Expensive quiet, the kind that came from thick carpets and soundproofed walls and people who whispered instead of talked. A woman in her 30s stood waiting by the elevator. Perfectly tailored suit, red hair, pulled back sharp eyes that cataloged Emily from head to toe in 3 seconds. "Emily Carter." "Yes, ma'am." "Grace Chen, Mr. Grant's executive assistant." She extended a hand. Her handshake was firm, assessing. "Follow me. We have exactly 12 minutes before his next meeting." They walked down a hallway lined with modern art that probably cost more than Emily's entire life. Grace moved like a general inspecting troops. "Ground rules," Grace said without looking back. "Mr. Grant doesn't do small talk. Don't waste his time. Don't apologize for taking up space. Don't call him sir unless you want to sound desperate. And whatever you do, don't mention his wife unless he brings her up first." "Understood." "Good." Grace stopped at a massive oak door. "He's already read your resume. He knows about your father's medical situation. He's not a charity case, so don't act grateful, act competent. Clear?" Emily nodded. Grace opened the door. William Grant's office was the size of Emily's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. A desk that looked like it cost more than a car. Bookshelves lined with legal texts and something unexpected, old novels, the kind with worn spines that meant they'd actually been read. William stood at the window phone pressed to his ear, looking out at the city like a man who owned it. Because he did own parts of it. "I don't care if the zoning board is concerned," he said into the phone. "We followed every regulation. If they want additional environmental reviews, they can request them through proper channels, not through threatening phone calls to my CFO. He paused. "Yes, do that, thank you." He hung up and turned to Emily. "You're early," he said. "That's good. It means you're nervous, and nervous people pay attention." Emily's mouth was dry. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Grant." "Don't thank me yet. You haven't earned it." He gestured to a chair. "Sit." She sat. William moved to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a document roughly 3 inches thick. He dropped it in front of Emily with a sound like a judge's gavel. "Hotel acquisition contract," he said. "Berlin property chain, 23 locations, 300 million euros. Closing in 6 weeks. My legal team spent 4 months reviewing this. They say it's clean." He sat down, steepled his fingers, and looked at Emily with eyes that could x-ray souls. "I don't believe them." Emily stared at the contract. It was entirely in German, single-spaced, dense legal terminology that would take weeks to parse properly. "You speak German," William said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "How well?" "Fluently. I studied it for 2 years specifically for contract work. German legal language is extremely precise. There are compound words that don't translate cleanly to English, which means American lawyers miss things." William nodded. "Exactly. That's why you're here." He slid the contract closer to her. "I need you to read this. Every page, every clause, every footnote. Find whatever my 60 lawyers missed." Emily's hands trembled as she touched the document. "Mr. Grant, I'm not qualified to—" "You found a clause in my prenup from memory while being publicly humiliated." William interrupted. That's more qualification than half my legal team has. They're good at billing hours. You're good at actually reading. He stood up. You have 4 weeks. Grace will set you up with an office, a computer translation software, if you need it, and access to our legal database. Your salary starts today. Benefits kick in after 30 days. If you find something significant, there's a $50,000 bonus. Emily's head spun. 50,000. And if you don't find anything, you still keep the key. This is a test of skill, not a gamble with your livelihood. William walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. Yes, my wife is going to come after you. He said it casually, like commenting on weather. Not today, probably not this week, but she will. Vanessa doesn't forgive humiliation, and you humiliated her in front of everyone who matters in her world. Emily's throat tightened. What should I do? Document everything, every threat, every interaction, every strange phone call. Grace has the number for our head of security. Use it if anything feels wrong. He opened the door. And Emily, yes, Mr. Grant, don't underestimate her. She married me for money, but she's not stupid. Cruel, vicious, vindictive, absolutely, but not stupid. He left. Emily sat alone with 300 million euros worth of legal documentation and the growing certainty that her father had been right. She'd just declared war on someone who played by different rules. Grace appeared in the doorway 20 minutes later, carrying a laptop and a cup of coffee that smelled like it cost $15. Your office is ready, Grace said. Floor 55, private quiet away from the executive circus. I had IT set up dual monitors and install the legal translation software Mr. Grant mentioned. Emily followed her to the elevator, still feeling like she was moving through a dream. Can I ask you something? Emily said as they descended. Depends on the question. Why is he really doing this, hiring me, I mean? Grace looked at her for a long moment. You want the official answer or the real one? Real. William Grant built his empire by reading people and contracts better than anyone else. He sees potential the way most people see color immediately, instinctively. He looked at you and saw someone smart enough to weaponize knowledge while being publicly destroyed. Grace's expression softened slightly. Also, I think watching you humiliate his wife was the first genuine moment of joy he's experienced in years. The elevator opened on 55. He's not a good man, Grace continued, leading Emily down another hallway. But he's not evil either. He's just tired. Tired of people who lie for a living. That's why he hired you. You told the truth when it would have been safer to stay quiet. She opened a door to a small office with a window view and enough space for Emily to actually breathe. This is yours. Door locks. Keycard access only. Your name's already on the building directory. Grace handed her the laptop. Coffee and snacks in the break room end of the hall. Bathroom 2 doors down. I'd avoid the executive dining room for now. Too many lawyers who'll resent you for existing. Emily set down her bag, still processing that she had an office. Her own office. Grace, she said quietly, thank you. Don't thank me. Just find whatever's hiding in that contract. William's instincts are usually right, and if he thinks something's wrong, Grace's expression darkened. Something's wrong. She left Emily alone. Emily sat at her new desk, opened the laptop, and started reading. The first page took her 30 minutes. Not because the German was difficult. Her language skills were solid, but because German legal contracts were structured differently than American ones. Clauses nested inside other clauses, like Russian dolls. References to external documents that had their own references. Footnotes that contained entire paragraphs of conditional exceptions. By hour 3, Emily's eyes burned. By hour 6, she'd found her first problem. It was smaller reference in Clause 23 to existing municipal obligations that didn't specify which municipality or what obligations. In American contracts, that would be standard vague language. In German contracts, it was a red flag. She made a note, highlighted the section, and kept reading. Her phone buzzed at 7 p.m. Unknown number, enjoying your new office, Emily. I hope you're comfortable. You won't be for long. V, Emily's blood went cold. Vanessa. She screenshot the text and forwarded it to Grace, then blocked the number with shaking hands. 2 minutes later, Grace called. Security's already tracing it, Grace said without preamble. Burner phone purchased with cash in Midtown this afternoon. Untraceable, but we have the timestamp and general location. I'm flagging it with NYPD just to create a paper trail. She's really going to come after me, Emily whispered. Yes, but we expected that. Grace's voice was steady grounding. From now on, you don't walk to the subway alone after dark. Building security will escort you. If you see anything strange, anyone following you, strange calls, weird packages, you call me immediately. Understood? Understood. Good. Now go home. Get some sleep. The contract will still be there tomorrow. Emily packed up her things, but she didn't go home. She went to the hospital. Her father was awake when she arrived, staring at the ceiling with the hollow expression of someone who'd been thinking too much. Dad? Hey, baby. He turned his head slowly. How was the first day in the big leagues? Emily sat down and told him everything. The contract, the office, Vanessa's text message, the growing certainty that she'd stepped into something much bigger and more dangerous than a simple job. Her father listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. You want to know what I think, he finally said. Always. I think you should quit. Emily's heart sank. Dad, I think you should quit, and I think you won't because you're your mother's daughter, and she never backed it down from anything either. He smiled sadly. Your mama would have loved this, watching you take on billionaires with nothing but a pen and a brain. I'm scared, Emily admitted. Good. Fear means you're paying attention. He squeezed her hand. But don't let fear make you small again. You spent 26 years making yourself invisible to survive. That stops now. What if I can't do this? What if you can? Emily stayed until visiting hours ended, then took a cab home because Grace's warning about walking alone had burrowed into her brain. She spent the night reading the contract, making notes, finding small inconsistencies that probably meant nothing, but might mean everything. At 3 a.m. she found it. Buried in Clause 47, the same number as Vanessa's prenup clause, which felt like the universe laughing at her, was a reference to historical preservation obligations pending review by Berlin municipal authorities. Emily cross-referenced it with the footnotes, then with the attached property surveys, then with the Berlin municipal code she pulled up online. Her hands started shaking. 4 of the 23 hotels were built on properties classified as historically significant under Berlin law, which meant any sale required municipal approval, which the sellers claimed they had obtained. But the dates were wrong. The approval certificates referenced in Appendix G were dated 6 months before the preservation status had been officially assigned, which meant the approvals were either fake or the preservation status had been assigned retroactively, or Emily's brain raced through possibilities. This wasn't just a missing clause, this was fraud, or a trap, or both. If William bought these hotels without proper preservation approvals, the Berlin municipal government could freeze the properties indefinitely, force renovations costing millions, even seize the buildings entirely under eminent domain. The sellers knew. They had to know, which meant this entire €300 million deal was designed to destroy William Grant. Emily grabbed her phone and called Grace, not caring that it was 3 a.m. Grace answered on the first ring. Talk to me. I found it, Emily said, her voice shaking. It's bad, Grace. Really bad. How bad? Someone's trying to bankrupt William Grant, and they almost succeeded. Silence on the line. Then I'm sending a car. Be downstairs in 10 minutes. Bring the contract and every note you've made. Grace, it's 3 in the morning. William doesn't sleep when money's being stolen from him. Move. The line went dead. Emily threw on clothes, grabbed her laptop and notes, and ran. The black car was waiting outside her building like Grace had conjured it from thin air. The driver said nothing, just drove through empty Manhattan streets at speeds that should have been illegal. They arrived at Grant Holdings at 3:42 a.m. The building was lit up like Christmas. Grace met her in the lobby looking perfectly put together despite the hour. 57th floor. William's already there with the legal team. The entire legal team. The ones who matter. Grace's expression was grim. The ones who either missed this on purpose or by incompetence. Either way, someone's getting fired tonight. They rode up in tense silence. The executive conference room was full of men in suits who looked like they'd been woken from sleep and forced to dress in the dark. 4 lawyers, 2 accountants, and William Grant sitting at the head of the table like a judge preparing to deliver sentence. Emily, William's voice cut through the nervous whispers. Show us. Emily's hands shook as she opened her laptop and connected it to the conference room display. For the next 20 minutes, she walked them through everything. The preservation clauses, the date discrepancies, the fake approvals, the legal trap hidden in Clause 47 that would have cost William not just 300 million euros, but potentially his entire European hotel portfolio if the fraud was connected to other properties. When she finished, the room was silent. One of the lawyers, a silver-haired man who looked like he billed 4 figures per hour, cleared his throat. This is speculative, he said carefully. The date discrepancy could be a clerical error. 4 separate clerical errors across 4 different properties. Emily's voice came out stronger than she felt. All with the exact same 6-month backdating issue. That's not clerical. That's intentional. You're accusing our German partners of fraud based on... I'm not accusing anyone of anything. Emily met his eyes. I'm showing you what's in the contract you approved. The lawyer's face went red. William held up a hand. Richard, stop talking. The lawyer's mouth snapped shut. William leaned forward, studying the screen with an expression Emily couldn't read. If you're right, he said quietly, this deal would have destroyed us. Berlin Municipal Code allows seizure of improperly transferred historical properties. We'd lose the hotels, the 300 million, and face lawsuits from every investor who trusted us. Yes, sir. And if you're wrong, Emily swallowed hard, then I just cost you a 300 million euro acquisition based on date stamps and paranoia. Which would you bet on? I'd bet on the dates being wrong intentionally. The pattern's too clean. William smiled, actually smiled, the first real one Emily had seen. So would I. He turned to the legal team. Richard, you're fired. You had 4 months to find this and missed it. Or worse, you saw it and ignored it. The silver-haired lawyer went white. William, you can't. I can, and I did. Security will escort you out. Your severance package will be generous because I'm not a monster, but you're done here. Richard stood up, shaking with rage, and looked at Emily like she'd just murdered his family. This is because of her, he spat. You're firing me for some waitress who's been here 3 days. I'm firing you, William said coldly, because she did your job better in 3 days than you did in 4 months. Get out. Security appeared in the doorway like they'd been waiting. Richard left his footsteps echoing down the hallway like gunshots. The remaining lawyers looked sick. William turned to Emily. You just saved this company approximately $500 million in combined losses and legal fees. That's conservative estimate. Emily couldn't breathe. Your $50,000 bonus just became $250,000, and your consulting position just became permanent senior contract analyst, $120,000 per year, full executive benefits. The room spun. Mr. Grant, I can't. You can and you will. Grace, draft the paperwork. William stood up. Meeting adjourned. I want updated due diligence on every European property by end of week. If we have more traps hiding in other contracts, I want them found. The lawyers scattered like roaches when lights turned on. Emily sat alone in the conference room, staring at her hands, trying to process that her life had just changed again in the space of 20 minutes. Grace appeared with a bottle of water. Drink this. You look like you might pass out. Emily drank. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the bottle. That lawyer, Richard, he looked at me like he wanted me dead, Emily whispered. He probably does. Grace's voice was matter of fact. You just cost him $1 million a year position. Men like Richard don't forget that. So now I have Vanessa Grant and a fired lawyer who both want revenge. Welcome to corporate America. Grace's smile was sharp. But you also have William Grant's protection, a $250,000 bonus, and proof that you're not just smart, you're dangerous. Emily looked up. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, it's supposed to make you careful. Grace sat down across from her. You're not a waitress anymore, Emily. You're a threat, and threats get eliminated. What do? You do your job, you watch your back, and you remember that the best revenge against people who underestimate you, Grace's smile widened, is proving them wrong. Emily went home at sunrise. Her father was awake, oxygen machine humming when she walked in. You look terrible, he said. I just made $250,000 and got promoted to a 6-figure job. Her father stared at her. Come again, Emily told him everything. When she finished, he was crying, actual tears running down his weathered face. "Mama would be so proud," he whispered. "So damn proud, baby." Emily cried too, holding her father's hand, thinking about her mother's fountain pen and how knowledge really was a loaded gun. She just fired her first shot, and the war was only beginning. 3 weeks of peace should have been a warning. Emily learned that lesson the hard way when Grace called her at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday with 4 words that stopped her heart. "Turn on the news." Emily fumbled for the remote, still half asleep in her father's apartment. She'd been staying there more often lately ever since the bonus money meant she could actually afford his medications and didn't have to choose between insulin and electricity. The television flickered to life. Her own face stared back at her. "Breaking news this morning as federal investigators look into allegations of corporate borrowed espionage at Grant Holdings," the anchor said smoothly. Emily Carter, a recently hired consultant with no formal legal credentials, stands accused of stealing proprietary information and selling it to competing hotel chains. Emily's vision tunneled. Sources close to the investigation say Carter gained access to sensitive acquisition documents under false pretenses using a fabricated educational background to infiltrate William Grant's inner circle. The alleged scheme came to light when anonymous emails surfaced, showing Carter communicating with executives at Meridian Hotels Grant Holdings' primary competitor. The screen showed emails, her name, her supposed words offering to sell confidential contract information for $200,000. "No," Emily whispered. "No, no, no. It's fake." Grace's voice cut through the phone, sharp and certain. "Every word is fabricated. We're already working with cyber forensics to prove it." "Grace, those emails, they look real. Because someone very good made them look real. Get dressed. Don't leave the apartment. Security's already outside your building. William's calling an emergency board meeting in 2 hours and you need to be there." "I can't. Everyone thinks I'm a criminal. Everyone thinks what Vanessa wants them to think." Grace's voice hardened. "This is her move, Emily. She's been planning this since the restaurant. Now fight back." The line went dead. Emily sat frozen watching her character assassination play out on live television. They showed her old Waitress uniform photos from Le Bernardin's website. They interviewed former colleagues who said she'd always seemed sneaky and ambitious beyond her station. They replayed security footage of her entering Grant Holdings at 3 a.m., making it look sinister instead of what it was, an emergency contract review. Her phone exploded with notifications. News outlets requesting comment. Former classmates asking if it was true. Unknown numbers sending death threats, calling her a gold-digging whore who destroyed a good man's company. Her father woke up to the noise. "Emily, what's happening?" She couldn't speak, just pointed at the television where a legal expert was explaining how corporate espionage carried sentences of up to 15 years in federal prison. Her father's face went gray. "Oh, baby. Oh, no. I didn't do this, Dad. I swear I didn't." "I know you didn't." He grabbed her hand with strength she didn't know he still had. "But that doesn't matter if they can make people believe you did." Someone pounded on the apartment door. Emily jumped like she'd been shot. "Ms. Carter, NYPD, we need to ask you some questions." Her father's grip tightened. "Don't open it. Not without a lawyer." Emily's hands shook as she pulled out her phone and called Grace back. "Police are at my door." "Don't open it. You're not under arrest. They're fishing for a statement they can use against you. Stay quiet. William's sending our attorney. She'll be there in 20 minutes. "Grace, I'm scared." "Good. Channel that fear into rage. Someone framed you, Emily. Someone went to enormous effort to destroy you. Don't let them win by falling apart." The pounding continued. "Ms. Carter, this will go easier if you cooperate." Emily sat on the floor back against the door, her father holding her hand while strangers tried to turn her into a criminal. The attorney arrived in 18 minutes. Her name was Sarah Chen, Grace's older sister, and she moved through the apartment like a general claiming territory. Expensive suit, sharp eyes, and a voice that could cut glass. "Don't say a word," she told Emily. "Not to the police, not to the press, not to anyone." "Understood?" Emily nodded mutely. Sarah opened the door. 2 detectives stood in the hallway looking annoyed. "Ms. Carter, we have some questions about—" "My client has no comment at this time," Sarah said crisply. "If you want to question her, arrange it through my office with proper notice. Until then, stop harassing a civilian who hasn't been charged with anything. We have evidence. You have fabricated emails that my firm's forensic team is currently tearing apart. Now leave before I file a harassment complaint. The detectives exchanged glances, then left. Sarah closed the door and turned to Emily. Get dressed, professional clothes, minimal makeup, hair pulled back. We're going to Grant Holdings, and you're going to walk in like you own the place. I can't. Everyone thinks what the news tells them to think. In 2 hours, we're going to tell them something different. Sarah's expression softened slightly. Emily, I've seen Vanessa Grant destroy 3 people this exact way. Fabricated evidence media, blitz, public humiliation. She's very good at it, but she made one critical mistake this time. What mistake? She went after someone William Grant actually values. The drive to Grant Holdings felt like riding to an execution. Paparazzi swarmed the car the moment they pulled up. Cameras flashing, reporters screaming questions, microphones thrust against the windows like weapons. Emily, did you steal from William Grant? Are you sleeping with him? How much did Meridian Hotels pay you? Sarah's hand clamped on Emily's wrist. Head up, eyes forward. Don't react. They want you to look guilty. They pushed through the crowd. Someone threw coffee at Emily. It missed splattering against Sarah's briefcase instead. Keep walking, Sarah commanded. Building security formed a wall pushing back the press. Emily stumbled into the lobby feeling like she'd just survived a war. Grace waited by the elevators, her expression carved from ice. They're all upstairs. Board members, investors, legal team. Half of them want you arrested. The other half want you disappeared. What does William want? Emily's voice cracked. To hear your side before burning everything down. The elevator ride took forever and no time at all. The boardroom was packed. 20 people in suits that cost more than cars, all turning to stare at Emily like she was a virus that had infected their profitable machine. William sat at the head of the table. He looked older than he had 3 weeks ago. Tired, angry. But his eyes locked on Emily's with something that might have been belief or might have been doubt. Emily couldn't tell anymore. Sit, William said quietly. Emily sat. Sarah stood behind her like a shield. A board member Emily didn't recognize slammed a folder on the table. These are the emails, William. 14 separate communications between Ms. Carter and Meridian Hotels offering to sell proprietary contract information. Her name, her personal email detailed knowledge of our Berlin acquisition that only someone with internal access could have. I didn't write those, Emily said. Her voice sounded small. Of course you'd say that, another board member sneered. Just like you'd claim your credentials were real when you fabricated your way into this company. She didn't fabricate anything, Grace interrupted. I personally verified her educational background before William hired her. Then explain the emails. Sarah stepped forward. I'll explain them. They're forgeries. Sophisticated ones, but forgeries nonetheless. Our forensic analysis shows they were created using an outdated email server protocol that Ms. Carter's actual account hasn't used in 3 years. The IP addresses traced to a VPN service popular in Eastern Europe. And most critically, she pulled out her own folder. The language patterns don't match. She spread papers across the table. These are writing samples from Ms. Carter's college coursework. Notice the sentence structure, the vocabulary choices, the way she constructs legal arguments. Now compare them to the alleged espionage emails. Emily watched the board members lean forward studying. The emails use passive voice extensively, Sarah continued. Ms. Carter writes almost exclusively in active voice. The emails make grammatical errors typical of non-native English speakers. Ms. Carter's writing is grammatically flawless. And most tellingly, the emails reference acquisition documents using German legal terminology that's 20 years out of date. She locked eyes with the board. Ms. Carter studies current German contract law. These emails were written by someone who learned German legal terminology decades ago and never updated their knowledge. Silence fell across the room. William leaned forward. You're saying someone fluent in outdated German legal language, framed Emily. I'm saying someone who fit that exact profile was fired from this company 3 weeks ago for incompetence. Sarah pulled out another document. Richard Blake, Harvard Law, 1994, specialized in international contracts with a focus on German corporate law, fired the same night Ms. Carter's analysis exposed his failure to catch a $300 million fraud. The room erupted. That's circumstantial. We can't accuse Richard without proof. This could be coincidence. It's not coincidence. Emily's voice cut through the chaos. She stood up, hands shaking but voice steady. And I can prove it. Every eye turned to her. Emily pulled out her phone, connected it to the conference room display, and showed them something she'd found at 4 a.m. that morning when she couldn't sleep. 3 days ago, someone accessed the Grant Holdings legal database using an old credentials token that should have been deactivated when Richard was fired. It missed it, but the access logs are still there. She pulled up the records. They downloaded 14 files, all related to the Berlin acquisition, all containing the exact information referenced in the fake emails sent to Meridian Hotels. Her hands steadied as she walked them through it. Then those same files were uploaded to a cloud server registered to a shell company in Delaware. That shell company was created 6 years ago by Richard Blake as part of a legitimate legal consultation project. He forgot it existed, but it still had his digital signature on the incorporation papers. She looked around the room. Richard made the emails. He used his outdated German legal knowledge because that's what he knows. He accessed the database with credentials IT forgot to kill, and he set me up because I cost him everything. A board member cleared his throat. This still doesn't explain how Vanessa Grant fits into... She paid him. Grace pulled out her phone, swiped to a photo, and displayed it on screen. This is Richard Blake having dinner with Vanessa Grant at Le Cirque 2 days after he was fired. Our investigator took this photo. They met 4 times in 3 weeks. Another photo. This is a wire transfer from one of Vanessa's personal accounts to Richard's account. $200,000. Sent the day before the fake email surfaced. The room went silent. William's face had gone from tired to terrifying. My wife paid my fired lawyer to frame Emily for corporate espionage. That's our working theory, Sarah said carefully, though proving criminal conspiracy requires more evidence than we currently have. Then get the evidence. William's voice was pure ice. Grace, I want Richard Blake's computer seized. I want every communication between him and Vanessa pulled. I want bank records, phone logs, everything. William, we can't just... I own this company. I can do whatever I want. He turned to Emily. I'm sorry for doubting you even for a second, for letting you walk into that media circus, for not protecting you better. Emily's eyes burned. You believe the evidence. I should have believed you first. William stood. Emergency press conference in 1 hour. Emily will be exonerated publicly. Richard Blake will be reported to the FBI for computer fraud and corporate espionage. And Vanessa, he stopped his expression going cold. Vanessa will learn that framing innocent people has consequences. The press conference was a massacre. William stood at a podium in the Grant Holdings lobby with Emily beside him, cameras flashing like lightning, and methodically destroyed both Richard Blake and his own wife. The allegations against Emily Carter are false, William said, his voice carrying through the packed room. She was framed by a former employee seeking revenge with financial backing from my wife, Vanessa Grant. Reporters exploded with questions. William raised a hand. We have forensic evidence proving the emails were fabricated. We have financial records showing payments from Vanessa to Richard Blake. We have access logs showing illegal database breaches. All of this has been turned over to federal authorities. He looked directly into the cameras. Emily Carter saved this company from a massive financial fraud. She was rewarded by being targeted for destruction by people who can't tolerate being outperformed by someone they consider beneath them. His voice hardened. That ends today. Ms. Carter is not only exonerated, she's being promoted to chief contract analyst with a seat on our legal advisory board. Anyone who has a problem with that can direct their complaints to my attorney. Emily stood there, tears running down her face, watching William Grant burn his own marriage down on live television to save her reputation. No further questions, William said, and walked out. The media went insane. Back in the boardroom, Grace handed Emily a glass of water. Drink, you're shaking again. On television, he called out his own wife. He called out someone who tried to destroy an innocent person. Grace's expression was grim. But Emily, you need to understand something. Vanessa's not done. This was just round 1. What do you mean? I mean she just got publicly humiliated for the 2nd time in a month. First in the restaurant, now on national news. She's not going to slink away. She's going to escalate. As if summoned by prophecy, Emily's phone buzzed. Unknown number. You think you've won. You stupid little girl. I will destroy everything you love, starting with your father. V. Emily's blood turned to ice. Grace was already moving phone to her ear. Security, I need a team at St. Luke's Hospital immediately. Patient David Carter, room 447. No one gets near him without my explicit approval. She turned to Emily. Get in the car, now. They ran. The drive to Queens took 17 minutes that felt like 17 hours. Emily's mind raced with horrifying possibilities. Vanessa had money connections and no conscience. She could hire someone to tamper with her father's medications, disconnect his oxygen, make it look like natural causes. The car screeched to a halt outside St. Luke's. Emily sprinted through the entrance, Grace right behind her, security guards forming around them. Fourth floor, room 447, the door was open. Emily's heart stopped. Her father sat up in bed alive, breathing, looking confused as two security guards stood watch and a nurse checked his vitals. Emily, what's going on? These people showed up and wouldn't let anyone in. Emily collapsed into the chair beside his, sobbing with relief. I'm okay, baby, her father said, gripping her hand. I'm right here. Grace stood in the doorway, phone pressed to her ear, speaking rapidly to someone. When she hung up, her expression was stone. Vanessa's lawyer just called, Grace said quietly. She's threatening a defamation lawsuit against William for the press conference. She claims she never paid Richard Blake, that the wire transfer was a legitimate legal consultation fee, and that we're conspiring to frame her in a nasty divorce. That's insane. We have the evidence. Evidence that a very expensive legal team is currently working to discredit. Grace sat down heavily. She's also filing for an emergency restraining order, claiming William is harassing her and threatening her safety. Emily's head spun. How is she the victim in this? Because she has better lawyers and no shame. Grace rubbed her temples. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Her phone rang again. She answered, listened, and her face went pale. When how many? Okay. Lockdown protocol. Nobody in or out without verification. She hung up and looked at Emily. Someone just leaked your father's medical records to the press. His diabetes diagnosis, his medication cost, the fact that you were working 2 jobs to pay for his care. They're spinning it as your motive that you infiltrated Grant Holdings to steal money for medical bills. Emily couldn't breathe. They leaked his private medical information. It's illegal, it's HIPAA violation, and we'll sue whoever did it into the ground. But the damage is done. It's already on 3 news sites. Emily's father squeezed her hand. Let them talk, baby. We know the truth. The truth doesn't matter if enough people believe the lie, Emily whispered. Grace's phone buzzed with an incoming text. She read it, and her expression changed to something Emily couldn't identify. What? Emily asked. William just filed for divorce. Not the financial review trigger, full immediate divorce. He's citing the prenup clause. You found the framing scheme, conspiracy to commit fraud and endangerment of an employee. He's asking for complete dissolution with 0 settlement. Emily stared. He's leaving her with nothing? If the prenup holds and we can prove her conspiracy, yes, she gets nothing. Not the penthouse, not the art collection, not the $5 million trust fund she's been living off. Grace's smile was sharp. He's using every weapon we gave him. Her phone rang again. What now? She answered, listened, and the color drained from her face completely. Are you sure? When okay, don't touch anything. We're sending federal investigators. She hung up with shaking hands. Richard Blake is dead, Grace said quietly. Apparent suicide. He hung himself in his apartment 3 hours ago. The room went silent except for the beep of medical equipment. No, Emily breathed. No, that's not, he wouldn't. The police are calling it suicide. Lawyer who got fired and publicly exposed, facing federal charges, looking at prison time. They're saying the pressure got to him. Grace's voice was hollow. But the timing is awfully convenient. Convenient for who? Emily's father asked. For Vanessa. Grace met Emily's eyes. Because dead men can't testify about who really paid them or why. Every communication between Richard and Vanessa just became hearsay. Every piece of evidence requires authentication he can't provide anymore. Emily's stomach turned. You think she killed him? I think Richard Blake knew things that could send Vanessa to prison, and now he's conveniently dead. Grace stood up. Think we're not dealing with a scorned wife anymore. We're dealing with someone who commits murder to protect herself. Emily's phone buzzed. Unknown number, 1 down. How many more people have to die before you learn your place? Quit, run, disappear, or your father's next, V. Emily showed Grace the message with shaking hands. Grace's expression went from grim to murderous. That's it. That's a direct death threat. We're taking this to the FBI. Now, they won't believe us. They'll believe phone records, digital forensics, and a pattern of escalating threats culminating in a suspicious death. Grace was already dialing. Emily, you need to make a choice. You can run, hide, let Vanessa win. Or you can fight back with everything you have. Emily looked at her father, hooked up to machines that kept him alive in a hospital room that cost more per day than most people made in a week. She thought about her mother's fountain pen in her pocket. She thought about 3 weeks ago when she was just a waitress being screamed at by rich people. She thought about William Grant looking at her like she mattered. I'm not running, Emily said quietly. I'm done running. Grace nodded. Then we go to war. Emily's father pulled her close, his voice weak but certain. That's my girl. Your mama didn't raise a quitter. Grace made 3 phone calls in rapid succession. FBI, NYPD, and someone she called only the investigator, who apparently specialized in cases involving wealthy people who thought they were above the law. We need to move you, Grace said when she finished. Both of you. Somewhere Vanessa can't find you until the FBI builds their case. I'm not leaving my job. You'll work remotely. William's already approved it. We have a safe house in Connecticut. Medical staff, security, everything your father needs. For how long? However long it takes to put Vanessa Grant in prison where she belongs. Emily stood up, legs shaking, and walked to the window. 4 stories down, she could see paparazzi gathered outside the hospital entrance, cameras ready to catch her looking scared and guilty. She pulled out her phone and called William directly. He answered immediately. Emily, are you safe? Your wife just threatened to kill my father unless I quit and disappear. Silence on the line. Then show me. Emily screenshot the messages and sent them. She heard William's sharp intake of breath. I'm calling the FBI director personally. This is conspiracy to commit murder. She's done. William, Mr. Grant, I need to know something. What? If I keep fighting, more people might die. Richard's already dead. Maybe it was suicide, maybe it wasn't. But either way, he's gone. If I stay, if I testify, if I help you destroy her, Emily's voice cracked. How many more people get hurt? William was quiet for a long moment. I can't answer that, he said finally. Vanessa's capable of anything when cornered, but I can tell you this, if you run, she wins. If she wins, she learns that murdering people who cross her works. And the next person who stands up to her, the next employee who outperforms her expectations, the next woman who makes her feel small, they die too. He paused. So you're not just fighting for yourself anymore, Emily. You're fighting so the next person doesn't have to. Emily closed her eyes. I hate that you're right. I hate that I'm asking this of you. William's voice softened. But you are the only person who's ever beaten her. The only one who saw through her lies and had the courage to call them out. If anyone can survive this, it's you. What if I can't? Then I'll make sure your father's taken care of for the rest of his life and your name is cleared completely. You have my word. Emily looked at her father, who nodded at her with fierce pride in his eyes. She looked at Grace, already coordinating with federal authorities. She thought about her mother, who'd worked herself to death to give Emily a better life. Okay, Emily said, let's end this. Grace drove them to Connecticut at midnight with a security detail that looked like a presidential motorcade. Emily's father was transferred by medical ambulance with armed guards. The safe house was actually beautiful. A restored farmhouse surrounded by woods with medical equipment already installed and staff waiting. You'll be safe here, Grace said as they got Emily's father settled. FBI's building their case. We have Richard Blake's computers, bank records, communications. It's only a matter of time. How much time? Days, maybe a week. Grace handed Emily a laptop. Work remotely, review contracts, stay busy, let the system work. Emily sat down at this kitchen table after Grace left, opened her laptop, and tried to focus on contract analysis. Her phone buzzed at 2 a.m. William Grant. Vanessa's lawyer just submitted a formal offer. She'll drop all charges, stop the threats, and accept the divorce terms if you publicly recant your testimony about the framing scheme and resign from Grant Holdings with a signed NDA. Emily stared at the message. She could end this right now. Just say the words, sign the papers, walk away. Her father would be safe. She'd still have the bonus money. She could finish school somewhere else, start over, pretend none of this happened. All she had to do was let Vanessa win. Her hands trembled over the keyboard. Then she thought about Richard Blake hanging in his apartment. She thought about the next Emily Carter who dared to be smart while poor. She typed 4 words, "Tell her absolutely not." William's response came immediately. "I was hoping you'd say that. Federal warrant for Vanessa's arrest just came through. They're picking her up at 6 a.m. It's over." Emily read the message 3 times before she believed it. It's over. She walked to her father's room. He was asleep, oxygen machine, humming but peaceful. She sat beside his bed, pulled out her mother's fountain pen and started writing. Not a contract analysis, a resignation letter. Not from Grant Holdings. From ever being small again. She'd spent 26 years apologizing for existing, for being smart, for wanting more. That version of Emily died in a Manhattan restaurant when she chose to fight back. This version, the one who'd survived corporate warfare, assassination attempts, and systematic destruction, this version was just getting started. Dawn broke over Connecticut. Emily's phone lit up with news alerts. Vanessa Grant arrested on conspiracy charges. Former billionaire wife faces federal investigation. William Grant's dramatic divorce exposes murder for hire plot. Emily watched the sun rise, her mother's pen in her hand, and smiled. The quiet girl in the corner just learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes survival isn't enough. Sometimes you have to win. The FBI took Vanessa Grant into custody at 6:47 a.m. in front of her Fifth Avenue penthouse while news helicopters circled overhead like vultures. Emily watched it happen on live television from the Connecticut safe house, coffee going cold in her hands, unable to look away from the spectacle of a woman who tried to destroy her being led away in handcuffs. Vanessa wore a cream Chanel suit and oversized sunglasses, her lawyer beside her shouting about wrongful arrest and police harassment. She looked perfect even in defeat. Blonde hair, immaculate posture, straight, not a single crack in the facade. Until the reporter shouted the question that changed everything. "Mrs. Grant, did you order the murder of Richard Blake?" Vanessa's head whipped toward the cameras, and for just a second, one beautiful, terrible second, the mask slipped. Emily saw pure rage flash across her face, the kind of rage that proved every accusation true. Then the lawyers closed ranks and Vanessa disappeared into the federal building. Emily's father shuffled into the kitchen, oxygen tank rolling behind him. "It's really over." "I don't know," Emily admitted. "She's arrested, but that doesn't mean convicted." "You did good, baby. Real good." He sat down heavily. "Your mama would have loved watching you take down someone like that." Emily's phone rang. William Grant. "Did you see?" he asked without preamble. "Everyone saw. It's on every channel." "Good. I want the world to see what happens when you threaten my people." William's voice was steel wrapped in ice. "The FBI has enough to hold her for 72 hours. After that, it depends on what Richard Blake's computers tell us. And if they don't tell us enough, then we find another way." He paused. "Emily, I need you back in Manhattan. Today." Emily's stomach dropped. "William, I can't. The threats are meaningless now that she's in federal custody. She can't hurt you from a jail cell." His voice softened slightly. "And I need you here for what comes next." "What comes next?" "The shareholder meeting. Vanessa's legal team is trying to block the divorce by claiming I'm abusing corporate resources for a personal vendetta. They're demanding an emergency vote to remove me as CEO. Emily's blood went cold. "They can do that. If they get enough board votes, yes. The meeting's at 2 p.m. I need every ally I have in that room." He paused. "I need you. I'm not a shareholder. You are as of this morning. I transferred 5% of my personal shares into your name. It's not controlling interest, but it's enough to vote. And more importantly, it's enough to speak." Emily couldn't breathe. "You gave me 5% of Grant Holdings. I gave you what you earned by saving this company twice." William's voice was matter-of-fact. "Now come home and help me save it a 3rd time." Grace arrived an hour later with a car security team and a garment bag containing a suit that fit Emily perfectly. "How did you know my size?" Emily asked. "I know everything." Grace's smile was sharp. "Now get dressed. We have a war to win." The drive back to Manhattan felt like traveling through a war zone. Every news station was covering the Vanessa Grant arrest. Talking heads debated whether Emily was a hero or a homewrecker. Social media had split into violent camps, some calling her a brave whistleblower, others demanding she be investigated for seducing a married billionaire. "Ignore it," Grace said, watching Emily scroll through Twitter. Public opinion is fickle. This time next week, they'll have moved on to the next scandal. And if Vanessa's lawyers convince the board to remove William, then we fight in court instead of a boardroom. But it's harder, bloodier, and takes years. Grace's expression hardened. That's why we win today. They arrived at Grant Holdings at 1:30 p.m. The lobby was packed with reporters, protesters holding signs that said both justice for Emily and gold digger whore, and shareholders in expensive suits looking nervous. Emily walked through the chaos with her head high, Grace on one side and armed security on the other, feeling like she was walking to her own execution. The elevator ride to the executive floor was silent except for Grace's rapid-fire texting. Who are you messaging? Emily asked. Everyone who matters. We need votes. Right now, we have 42% definite support, 30% definite opposition, 28% undecided. Grace's fingers flew across her phone. We need to flip at least 8% of the undecideds. How do we do that? You tell the truth. Boring, unglamorous truth about what actually happened. No drama, no performance, just facts. Grace looked up. Rich people hate uncertainty more than they hate scandal. Give them certainty and they'll vote for stability. The elevator opened. William stood waiting in the hallway flanked by his legal team. He looked like he'd aged 5 years, in 5 days, exhausted, hollowed out, but still standing. Emily, he gripped her hand briefly. Thank you for coming. You gave me 5% of your company. I figured I should at least show up. William's smile was ghost thin. Don't thank me yet. If we lose today, those shares might be worthless by tomorrow. They walked into the boardroom together. 40 shareholders packed the space, their collective net worth probably exceeding the GDP of small nations. Emily recognized some faces from news articles and Forbes covers. Others were strangers who looked at her like she was something they'd scraped off their shoe. At the far end of the table sat Marcus Webb, a silver-haired man in his 60s who practically radiated old money and older grudges. William, Marcus said coldly, so glad you could join your own execution. Marcus? William's voice could have frozen nitrogen. Still playing corporate raider at your age, I thought you'd retired to Florida to golf and die quietly. I came back specifically for this, to watch you lose everything because you couldn't keep your personal drama separate from business. Marcus gestured to Emily. You jeopardized this company's reputation, its stability and shareholder value, all because you wanted to play hero for some waitress who seduced her way into our confidential contracts. Emily's hands clenched into fists. William's voice went dangerously quiet. Careful, Marcus. Or what? You'll have me arrested too, Marcus smiled. You've weaponized law enforcement against your own wife. You've promoted an unqualified employee with no credentials to a senior analyst position. You've created a media circus that's cost us 3 major acquisition deals and tanked our stock price by 7%. He looked around the room. Gentlemen, ladies, I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in William Grant's leadership. All in favor. 12 hands went up. Emily's heart sank. All opposed, 16 hands, abstentions. 12 hands stayed down, including Emily's, because she had no idea what she was supposed to do. Marcus smiled. We have a deadlock, which means per corporate bylaws, we debate until someone changes their vote. He leaned back. This should be entertaining. For the next hour, Emily watched corporate warfare at its finest. Marcus attacked William's judgment, his personal life, his hiring practices. He brought up every business decision from the past 5 years that hadn't worked out perfectly. He questioned William's mental fitness, suggesting the stress of the divorce had compromised his ability to lead. William's supporters defended him, but their arguments felt weak defensive. They were losing ground. At 3:15 p.m., one of the abstaining shareholders, a woman named Patricia Chen, who owned 4%, raised her hand. I'd like to hear from Emily Carter. The room went silent. Marcus's smile widened. Oh, this should be good. Let's hear from the woman at the center of this disaster. Tell us, Ms. Carter, how exactly did you seduce your way from waitressing to corporate leadership? In 3 weeks, Emily's vision went red. Grace's hand clamped on her wrist under the table. A warning. Don't take the bait. But Emily was done swallowing insults from rich people who thought her existence was an offense. She stood up. I didn't seduce anyone, Emily said quietly. I read a contract. The room shifted, attention sharpening. I read a 47-page prenuptial agreement from memory while being publicly humiliated by a woman who threw wine in my face for being poor. I identified a legal clause that 63 Harvard lawyers missed. Then I read a €300 million acquisition contract and found a fraud scheme that would have bankrupted this company. She walked around the table, her voice gaining strength. You want to know my credentials? I worked 2 jobs for 8 years to pay for my father's medical care while studying contract law at night school. I speak 4 languages fluently. I've read more legal documentation in the past month than most of your lawyers read in a year. She stopped in front of Marcus. And you want to call that seduction? Fine. Call it whatever you want. But those shares William gave me, I earned them by saving this company twice. What exactly have you done besides show up to meetings and complain? Marcus's face went purple. How dare you? How dare I what? Tell the truth. Emily's voice could cut glass now. You're not angry because William promoted someone unqualified. You're angry because he promoted someone you consider beneath you. Someone who used to serve you food. She looked around the room. Half of you probably don't even know my name. You just know I'm the waitress who got uppity. Well, here's something else I know. 3 of you are in active negotiations to sell your shares to Meridian Hotels. The room exploded. That's confidential. How could you possibly? Because I read contracts, Emily said calmly, including the share transfer agreements that got accidentally CEC'd to the legal department yesterday. You're planning to sell during this chaos when prices are low, then let Meridian acquire enough shares to force a merger. She pulled out her phone and displayed a document on the conference room screen. Here are the transfer agreements. Here are the dates. Here are the signatures. 3 shareholders went white. That's illegal, one started. Actually, it's not, Emily interrupted, but it is a massive conflict of interest. You're voting to remove William, not because he's a bad CEO, but because you've already sold out to his competitor. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. This is absurd. You can't prove. I can prove everything. Grace, show them. Grace pulled up bank records, email chains, meeting schedules. Everything Emily had spent the past 3 days compiling from publicly available corporate filings in a few strategically placed information requests. The room descended into chaos. Patricia Chen stood up. I move to table the no confidence vote pending investigation into potential conflicts of interest among voting shareholders. Seconded, another voice called. Marcus looked like he might have a stroke. You can't. All in favor of tabling, Patricia called out. 24 hands went up. The motion passed. William stood slowly, his expression unreadable. This meeting is adjourned pending ethics review. Marcus, you and your co-conspirators have 48 hours to divest your conflicted shares or face legal action for breach of fiduciary duty. He turned to Emily. My office, now. Emily followed him out, leaving behind a boardroom in complete meltdown. In the elevator, William was silent. In the hallway, William was silent. In his office, he closed the door, walked to the window, and stood there for a full minute, saying nothing. Emily's heart hammered. If I overstepped, William turned around. He was smiling, actually smiling, the first real, genuine smile Emily had ever seen from him. You just saved my company for the 3rd time in a month, he said quietly, by publicly eviscerating a boardroom full of billionaires with nothing but facts and righteous anger. I probably shouldn't have called them out like that. You absolutely should have. William walked over and sat down heavily in his chair. I've been playing nice with these people for 20 years, being diplomatic, strategic, careful, and they've been bleeding me dry while smiling to my face. He looked at her. You walked in and burned it all down in 10 minutes. It was beautiful. Emily sat down, legs shaking. What happens now? Now we investigate. The share transfers force the conspirators out and rebuild the board with people who aren't actively trying to destroy the company. William pulled out his phone. Also, the FBI just called. They found Richard Blake's insurance policy. Emily's blood went cold. What insurance policy? Apparently, Richard kept detailed records of every conversation with Vanessa. Audio recordings, encrypted files, backup drives hidden in 3 separate locations. William's smile turned predatory. He knew she'd betray him eventually, so he protected himself. And the recordings are detailed, damning and admissible in court. Vanessa explicitly ordering him to frame you, discussing payment amounts, planning Richard's own death to eliminate him as a witness. William set down his phone. She's done. Completely permanently done. Emily should have felt relief, victory, something. Instead, she felt hollow. William, can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you really give me those shares and don't say I earned them? William was quiet for a long moment. You want the truth? Always. Because watching you fight back reminded me why I built this company in the first place. He looked out at Manhattan spreading below them. I was like you once. Poor kid from nowhere with nothing but brains and ambition. I clawed my way up, made my fortune, and somewhere along the way I forgot what it felt like to be hungry. He turned back to her. Then you walked into my restaurant, got wine thrown in your face, and instead of apologizing, you wrote out a legal clause from memory. You reminded me that the fight matters, that winning isn't enough, you have to win the right way. Emily's eyes burned. I'm just a waitress who read some contracts. No, William's voice was firm. You're a fighter who happens to have read contracts. There's a difference. Grace knocked and entered without waiting. We have a problem. What now? William sighed. Vanessa posted bail. $2 million cash. Her lawyers already filed motions to suppress Richard's recordings, claiming illegal wiretapping. Grace's expression was grim. She's out. Emily's stomach dropped. But the threats are still on record. She's under house arrest with electronic monitoring. She can't leave her penthouse without permission. Grace paused. But Emily, she's not done. Her lawyers are good, really good. They're going to fight this with everything they have. Let them fight. William stood up. We have recordings, digital evidence, witness testimony. We have her dead to rights. We have evidence that expensive lawyers will spend months trying to discredit. Grace looked at Emily. This goes to trial. You're going to be on that stand for days. They're going to tear apart every aspect of your life, your education, your jobs, your father's medical bills, every decision you've ever made. They're going to paint you as a gold digger who seduced William and fabricated evidence to frame an innocent woman. Emily felt sick. How long? Trial could take 6 months to a year. Maybe longer if they drag it out. Grace's voice softened. And that's if the prosecutors even get to trial. Vanessa's team is already working on a plea deal. What kind of deal? The kind where she pleads to a minor charge, pays a fine, and walks away. Grace's expression was bitter. Rich people don't go to prison, Emily. They hire lawyers who make problems disappear. Emily stood up, walked to the window, and looked down at the street 63 floors below. No, she said quietly. No what? William asked. No plea deals, no settlements, no backroom compromises where she pays money and walks away. Emily turned around. She tried to frame me for corporate espionage. She threatened to kill my father. She may have murdered Richard Blake. And you're telling me she might just pay a fine? That's how the system works, Grace started. Then we break the system. Emily's voice was steel. I don't care how long the trial takes or how ugly it gets. She goes down for what she did. All of it. William and Grace exchanged glances. Emily, William said carefully, I admire your conviction, but you don't understand what you're asking for. A trial means your entire life becomes public record. Every mistake, every secret, everything you've ever done wrong, it all comes out. I don't have secrets. I'm broke. I'm a waitress. My biggest crime is overdue library fines. Emily's hands clenched. But Vanessa, she has secrets. Rich people always do. So we dig, we find them, and we use them. Grace's smile was slow and dangerous. I like the way you think. William nodded slowly. Okay, we fight. No deals, no compromises. He looked at Grace. Contact the investigator. Tell him the budget just became unlimited. I want everything on Vanessa, every affair, every tax dodge, every skeleton in her designer closet. Grace pulled out her phone. Consider it done. Emily's phone buzzed. Her father's nurse. Emily, you need to come to the hospital. Your father's asking for you. It's important. Emily's heart stopped. Is he okay? He's stable. But there's something he needs to tell you. He says it can't wait. Emily grabbed her bag. I have to go. Take my car, William said immediately. And security. Vanessa's out on bail. I don't want you unprotected. Emily ran. The drive to Queens took 30 minutes that felt like 30 hours. Her mind raced with terrible possibilities. Heart attack? Stroke? Infection? The diabetes finally winning after years of slow battle. She burst into her father's hospital room at full speed. He was sitting up, oxygen tube in place, looking tired but alert. And next to his bed sat a woman Emily had never seen before, late 50s, expensive clothes, kind eyes. "Dad? What's going on? Who is this?" Her father took a shaking breath. "Emily, baby, sit down. There's something I should have told you a long time ago." Emily sat, her heart hammering. "This is Margaret Blake," her father said quietly. "Richard Blake's mother." The world tilted sideways. "Richard's what, Waifimi?" Margaret spoke, her voice soft and broken. "My son kept a journal. The FBI gave it to me this morning after they finished with it. Emily, he wrote about you." She handed Emily a leather notebook. Emily opened it with shaking hands and started reading Richard's final entries. "I made a terrible mistake. Vanessa Grant paid me to destroy an innocent woman. Emily Carter did nothing wrong except be smarter than me. I'm too much of a coward to confess, but if something happens to me, if Vanessa decides I'm a loose end, I want the truth known. Emily deserves better than what I did to her. She deserves better than all of us." Emily's vision blurred. "I'm scared. Vanessa's lawyer called today. He said I'm a liability. Said loose ends get tied up. I think they're going to kill me. I think I'm going to die because I was too greedy to say no to $200,000. The final entry was dated the morning Richard died. "If you're reading this, I'm already dead. Vanessa Grant had me killed. Prove it. Make her pay. Tell Emily I'm sorry." Emily looked up, tears streaming down her face. He knew. He knew she was going to kill him, and he couldn't stop it. Margaret was crying too. "My son made terrible choices, but he didn't deserve to die, and you didn't deserve what he did to you." She pulled out an envelope. "This was with the journal. He wanted you to have it." Emily opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a handwritten letter and a USB drive. "Emily, I recorded everything. Every conversation with Vanessa, every plan, every payment. It's all on this drive. Use it. Destroy her. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to do it myself. RB." Emily stared at the USB drive like it was a bomb. "This is it," she whispered. "This is everything we need to put her away forever." Her father gripped her hand. "Baby, are you sure you want to do this? Going up against someone like that?" "She murdered him, Dad. She planned it, paid for it, and then tried to make it look like suicide." Emily's voice was ice. "Yes, I'm sure." Margaret stood up. "Then I'm testifying. Whatever you need, whatever it takes, I'll do it. For my son." Emily hugged her two women brought together by one evil person's ambition and made a silent promise. Vanessa Grant was going down. Not with a plea deal, not with a settlement, all the way down. She called William from the hospital parking lot. "We have it," she said when he answered. Richard recorded everything, every conversation, every plan. Full audio, video payment records. All of it. Silence on the line. Then, "Where are you?" "St. Luke's. Richard's mother just gave me the evidence." "Stay there. I'm sending Grace with the entire legal team. We're bringing this to the FBI tonight." His voice was electric. "Emily, this is it. This is the endgame." Grace arrived 40 minutes later with 3 lawyers, 2 FBI agents, and enough legal paperwork to build a house. They sat in a hospital conference room and went through every file on Richard's USB drive. 2 hours later, the FBI agents stood up with expressions Emily had never seen before. "Ms. Carter," one said formally, "we're going to need you to come with us to give a formal statement. This evidence is substantial enough to file additional murder conspiracy charges against Vanessa Grant." Additional charges. She's already facing conspiracy to commit fraud and witness intimidation. With this, he held up the USB drive. "We're adding conspiracy to commit murder. Accessory to murder and racketeering. We're going for a federal RICO case." Emily blinked. RICO, like organized crime. Like systematic criminal enterprise. If we prove she's been using her wealth to commit multiple felonies across state lines, and this evidence suggests she's looking at 20 years minimum. No plea deals, no early release. Emily looked at Grace, who was smiling like Christmas had come early. "Let's do it," Emily said. They worked through the night. Emily gave her statement, signed documents, authenticated. Evidence walked FBI agents through timelines and communications. At 6 a.m., federal agents arrested Vanessa Grant for the second time. This time there was no bail. Emily watched it happen on the news from the FBI field office, drinking terrible coffee and feeling like she'd run a marathon. Vanessa screamed at the agents, her perfect facade finally cracking completely. She looked old suddenly, her face twisted with rage, mascara running, nothing left of the polished socialite who'd thrown wine in Emily's face 5 weeks ago. "We got her," Grace said quietly, standing beside Emily. "It's really over." Emily waited for relief to hit. Instead, she felt empty. "What do I do now?" she asked. Grace looked at her. "You live. You build a life that isn't defined by surviving someone else's cruelty. You become whoever you want to be." "I don't know who that is anymore." "Then you have the rest of your life to figure it out." Grace smiled. "But maybe start with going home and sleeping for 24 hours straight." Emily did exactly that. She slept for 18 hours, woke up in her father's apartment, made breakfast for the first time in weeks, and sat at the kitchen table feeling like she'd been reborn. Her phone buzzed. William Grant. "Trial date set for 6 months from now. Prosecutors are confident. You did good, Emily. Take the next week off. Paid, rest, heal. Then come back and help me rebuild this company the right way." Emily stared at the message. Then she typed, "Actually, I quit." She sent it before she could change her mind. William called immediately. "What do you mean you quit?" "I mean, I'm done, William. I'm grateful for everything, the job, the money, the protection. But I didn't survive all of this just to spend my life reading contracts for billionaires." "Then what do you want?" Emily looked at her father, who smiled at her with fierce pride. "I want to teach," she said. "I want to help people like me, people who are smart, but poor people who get overlooked because of their race or their accents or where they're from. I want to teach them that knowledge is power and nobody gets to take that away." William was quiet for a long time. "What if I funded it?" he finally said. "Funded what?" "A scholarship program. Full ride to anyone who works service industry jobs and wants to study law, business, contracts, whatever they need. We'll call it the Emily Carter Scholarship for Working Class Excellence." Emily's throat closed. "William, you changed my life, Emily. Let me help you change others." His voice was gentle. "And maybe occasionally you can consult on the really complicated contracts, for obscene amounts of money, of course." Emily laughed through tears. "Okay, deal." 6 months later, Emily stood in a Columbia University lecture hall teaching Introduction to Contract Law to 40 students who worked nights and weekends to pay for their education. Her father sat in the front row, healthier than he'd been in years. Medical bills finally paid off. In the back row sat William Grant, who showed up to every lecture like a proud parent. And on the news that morning, Vanessa Grant had been sentenced to 23 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. Emily finished her lecture with one message: language is power, knowledge is dignity, and no one, no matter how rich, how powerful, how cruel, gets to take that away from you unless you let them. 40 students wrote it down like gospel. Emily smiled, thinking about a fountain pen and a woman who'd taught her to fight back. The quiet girl in the corner had finally learned to roar, and she was just getting started. The classroom was too quiet. Emily had been teaching for 2 months now, and she'd learned to read silence the way she once read contracts, carefully looking for the hidden meaning beneath the surface. This silence felt wrong. 40 students stared at their desks instead of at her. Nobody asked questions. Nobody made eye contact. The energy that usually filled her, in Introduction to Contract Law lectures, had evaporated like morning fog. "Okay," Emily said, setting down her marker. "What's going on?" A girl in the third row, Maria, who worked nights at a hall in Brooklyn, raised her hand slowly. "Professor Carter, is it true?" Emily's stomach tightened. "Is what true?" "That you're being investigated. That the whole Vanessa Grant case might be overturned because of," Maria's voice dropped to a whisper, "because of falsified evidence." The room temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. "Where did you hear that?" Emily asked carefully. A boy in the back row held up his phone. "It's on the news. Vanessa Grant's lawyers filed an appeal claiming the recordings were tampered with. They're saying you and William Grant fabricated everything to frame her." Emily's vision blurred. She grabbed the edge of her desk to steady herself. "Class dismissed," she said quietly. "We'll pick this up next week." The students filed out in uncomfortable silence, leaving Emily alone in the lecture hall with a phone that was already buzzing with messages. "Grace, don't watch the news. Coming to get you now. William, her lawyers are desperate. This is a Hail Mary. We'll fight it." The no number. "Karma's a bitch, isn't it? See you in court, V." Emily stared at Vanessa's message, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped her phone. It couldn't be happening again. She'd won. Vanessa was in prison. The trial was over. Justice had been served. Except apparently justice wasn't permanent when you had enough money to buy new lawyers and file endless appeals. Grace arrived 15 minutes later, her expression grim. Get your things. We're going to William's office. Now. The car ride was silent except for Grace's furious texting. Emily watched Manhattan blur past the windows and felt like she was living the same nightmare on repeat. William's office was full when they arrived. Lawyers everywhere, all talking at once, papers scattered across every surface, like someone had detonated a legal bomb. William stood at his window, looking older than Emily had ever seen him. When he turned, his eyes were tired but furious. Vanessa's legal team filed a motion claiming Richard Blake's recordings were edited, he said without preamble. They have a forensic audio expert claiming digital manipulation. They're arguing the entire case was built on falsified evidence. Emily couldn't breathe. But that's impossible. The FBI verified the recordings were authentic when they received them, one of the lawyers interrupted. Vanessa's team is claiming the tampering happened before that you or someone working with you altered them and then passed them off as originals. That's insane, Emily's voice cracked. I got those recordings from Richard's mother. I handed them directly to federal agents. I know that. You know that. But Vanessa's lawyers are good at creating reasonable doubt. William's jaw clenched. They're also claiming that Margaret Blake had motive to frame Vanessa for her son's death. That grief made her complicit in a revenge scheme. Emily felt sick. They're going after Margaret. She just lost her son. They're going after everyone. Grace pulled up a document on her tablet. They filed motions to depose you, William, Margaret, every FBI agent involved in the case, every technical expert. They're demanding access to all original evidence for independent review. They're trying to drown the prosecution in paperwork and create enough doubt to get Vanessa's conviction overturned. Can they do that? Emily whispered. They can try, William said, and with enough money and time they might succeed. Not because they're right, because they can afford to never stop fighting. Emily sank into a chair, her entire world collapsing again. So what do we do? William looked at his legal team. We fight. We bring in our own forensic experts. We prove the recordings are authentic. We bury them in evidence until there's no doubt left. That could take months, one of the lawyers said. Maybe years. And it'll cost millions. I don't care what it costs. William's voice was steel. That woman tried to murder Emily and succeeded in murdering Richard Blake. She doesn't get to buy her way out of prison. Emily's phone buzzed, her father's nurse. Not again. Please, not again. She answered with shaking hands. Hello. Emily, it's okay. He's stable, the nurse said quickly, but he's asking for you, says it's urgent. I'm coming. She stood up. I have to go. My father. I'll drive you, Grace said immediately. They left the lawyers arguing strategy and drove to Queens in tense silence. Emily's father was awake when she arrived, but his color was wrong, too pale, too gray, like all the progress from the past months had evaporated overnight. Dad, what's wrong? What happened? He gripped her hand with surprising strength. I saw the news, baby, about Vanessa's appeal. Don't worry about that. We're going to fight it. Emily, stop. His voice was firm despite the oxygen mask. I need to tell you something I should have said a long time ago. Emily sat down, fear crawling up her spine. What is it? Your mother, before she died, she made me promise something. He coughed, wet and harsh. She made me promise that if you ever got the chance to be more than what we were, more than poor, more than struggling, I'd make sure you took it and never looked back. Emily's throat tightened. Dad, she was so proud of you, baby. So proud of how smart you were, how hard you worked. But she was also terrified. His eyes filled with tears, terrified that you'd spend your whole life fighting the same battles she did, working yourself to death for people who'd never see you as anything but the help. He squeezed her hand. You've done everything she dreamed of and more. You beat them, Emily. You won. And now they're trying to pull you back into the mud because that's what rich people do when poor people dare to win. I can't just give up. I'm not asking you to give up. His voice was fierce. I'm asking you to decide what you're really fighting for. Are you fighting because it's right or because you're afraid that if you stop fighting, you'll go back to being invisible? Emily opened her mouth to answer and realized she didn't know. Her father coughed again harder this time. A nurse appeared in the doorway looking worried. "Visiting hours are over," she said gently. "He needs to rest." Emily kissed her father's forehead. "I love you, Dad." "Love you too, baby. Now go figure out who you're supposed to be." Grace drove her back to her apartment in silence. When they arrived, she turned to Emily with an expression Emily couldn't read. "He's right, you know," Grace said quietly. "You don't owe William anything. You don't owe the prosecutors anything. If you want to walk away from this whole mess, nobody would blame you. Vanessa would win. Vanessa's already in prison. She's already lost." Grace's voice softened. "The question is whether you're willing to spend the next 2 years of your life in court proving she stays there, and whether that's really how you want to live." Emily stared at her apartment building, thinking about her students, her father, the life she'd started building after the trial ended. "I don't know what to do," she admitted. "Then sleep on it. Decide tomorrow." Grace squeezed her shoulder. "But Emily, whatever you choose, make sure it's for you, not for revenge." Emily spent the night staring at the ceiling, her mother's fountain pen on the nightstand beside her. At 3 a.m., she finally understood what her father had been trying to tell her. She'd spent her entire life proving she was smart enough, good enough, worthy enough. First to guidance counselors who said college was unrealistic, then to customers who treated her like furniture, then to Vanessa Grant and everyone who thought being poor meant being stupid. But she'd already proven it. She'd won. The question was whether she needed to keep winning to believe it herself. Her phone buzzed with an email. The subject line made her heart stop. From the desk of Margaret Blake. Emily opened it with shaking hands. "Emily, I've been thinking about what my son would want. He died because he wasn't brave enough to tell the truth when it mattered. I don't want to make the same mistake. Vanessa's lawyers contacted me yesterday. They offered me $2 million to recant my testimony and claim the recordings were fabricated. I told them to go to hell. But I want you to know something. If you choose to walk away from this fight, I'll understand. You've already sacrificed enough. Richard would want you to live your life, not spend it fighting his battles. Whatever you decide, thank you for giving his death meaning. Margaret." Emily read the email 3 times. Then she made her decision. She called William at 4 a.m., knowing he wouldn't be asleep either. "I'm not walking away," she said when he answered, "but I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it because Richard Blake deserves justice and Vanessa Grant deserves prison." "What changed?" William asked. "I stopped fighting to prove I'm worthy and started fighting because it's right." Emily's voice was steady. "There's a difference." William was quiet for a moment. "Yes, there is. Okay. We fight. Together." "Together," Emily agreed. The next 6 months were brutal. Depositions that lasted days. Forensic experts picking apart every second of audio. Vanessa's lawyers throwing everything they had at the case: procedural challenges, evidence disputes, character assassinations, disguised as legal arguments. They went after Emily's education, her work history, her relationship with William. They painted her as an opportunist who'd fabricated evidence for money and fame. They went after Margaret Blake, claiming grief had made her delusional and vindictive. They even went after Richard's memory, trying to paint him as mentally unstable and suicidal to explain away the recordings. But Emily had learned something important over the past year. The truth didn't need to be loud to be powerful. It just needed to be persistent. So she sat through every deposition calmly. She answered every accusatory question with facts. She let Vanessa's lawyers exhaust themselves trying to make her emotional while she stayed cold and precise. And slowly, methodically, the case held. The forensic experts found no evidence of tampering. The FBI stood by their authentication. Margaret Blake's testimony never wavered, and Richard's recordings spoke for themselves: hours of Vanessa Grant planning fraud, conspiracy, and murder in her own voice. The appeals court hearing was set for a Tuesday in November, almost exactly 1 year after the restaurant incident that started everything. Emily wore her mother's favorite color, deep blue, and carried the Mont Blanc pen in her jacket pocket like a talisman. The courtroom was packed. Press supporters, protesters, people who'd followed the case from the beginning and wanted to see how it ended. Vanessa sat at the defense table in prison orange, her perfect blonde hair now gray at the roots, her face harder and older than Emily remembered. When their eyes met, Vanessa smiled. It was a terrible smile full of promise that this wasn't over, would never be over. That rich people didn't lose to waitresses even in prison. Emily smiled back. She'd stopped being afraid of that smile months ago. The judge entered. Everyone stood. For the next 4 hours, lawyers argued. Vanessa's team presented their case for evidence, tampering with charts and expert testimony and passionate speeches about reasonable doubt. The prosecution countered with their own experts, their own evidence, their own timeline of how every piece of the case fit together without manipulation. Finally, the judge called for a recess. Emily sat in the hallway with William, Grace, and Margaret, all of them silent with tension. "Whatever happens," Margaret said quietly, "thank you, all of you. My son's death mattered because you made it matter." William nodded. He was braver than he knew. The recordings proved that. Grace checked her phone. "Court's resuming in 5 minutes." They walked back in together. The judge looked at both legal teams with an expression that gave nothing away. "I've reviewed all submitted evidence and arguments," she said formally. "The defense's claim of evidence tampering is based on speculation rather than proof. The forensic analysis shows no signs of digital manipulation. The chain of custody was properly maintained. And most critically, the content of the recordings aligns with independent evidence gathered by law enforcement before those recordings were even discovered." She looked directly at Vanessa. "The appeal is denied. The conviction stands. The sentence remains 23 years without possibility of parole." The gavel fell. Vanessa's face went white, then red, then purple. She screamed something at her lawyers, but security was already moving to escort her out. As they led her past Emily, Vanessa stopped. "This isn't over," she hissed. "I have resources you can't imagine. I'll appeal again. And again. I'll make your life hell until..." "Until what?" Emily interrupted calmly. "Until I'm afraid again, until I remember my place, until I act like I'm less than human because you say so." She leaned closer. "I learned something this year, Vanessa. You don't have power because you're rich. You have power because people are afraid to tell you no. But I'm not afraid anymore. So you have no power over me." Emily straightened up. "Enjoy prison. I hear the food is terrible and nobody cares about your pedigree." Vanessa lunged at her. Security grabbed her before she got close. "You're nothing, Vanessa," Vanessa screamed as they dragged her away. "You'll always be nothing, a waitress playing dress-up who got lucky." Emily watched her disappear through the courtroom doors. Then she turned to Margaret, William, and Grace, who were all staring at her with expressions ranging from shock to pride. "Did I really just do that?" Emily whispered. "You really did," Grace said, grinning. "That was incredible." Margaret hugged her tightly. "Richard would have loved that. He always wanted to stand up to her but never could. Thank you for doing it for him." William's smile was quiet but genuine. "How does it feel?" Emily thought about it. "Like finally exhaling after holding my breath for a year." They walked out of the courthouse together into November sunshine. Reporters swarmed them, immediately shouting questions, cameras flashing. Emily stopped at the top of the stairs looking at the crowd and made a decision. "I have a statement," she said. The reporters went silent. "My name is Emily Carter. A year ago, I was a waitress working 2 jobs to pay for my father's medical care. I got publicly humiliated by someone who thought being rich meant she could treat people however she wanted. I fought back with the only weapon I had, knowledge, and I won." She paused. "But this isn't a story about me beating Vanessa Grant. It's a story about what happens when people who've been made invisible their whole lives finally get seen. There are thousands of people like me working jobs that rich people don't notice, studying at night, fighting to survive while dreaming of more. This victory is for all of them." Emily pulled out her mother's fountain pen and held it up. "My mother gave me this pen before she died. She told me education was the only inheritance she could give me. She was wrong. She gave me something better. She taught me that knowledge is power, and nobody gets to take that away unless you let them." She looked directly into the cameras. "To everyone who's been called stupid because of your job or your clothes or your accent, you're not stupid. You're underestimated. Use that. Read everything. Learn everything. Let them think you're invisible while you're really just preparing to prove them wrong." She pocketed the pen. "That's all I have to say." The reporters erupted with questions, but William's security team moved them through the crowd to a waiting car. Inside, Grace was crying. "What?" Emily asked, alarmed. "That was perfect," Grace said, wiping her eyes. You just became every working class kid's hero. I just told the truth. The truth is powerful when it comes from someone who lived it. William's voice was soft. You're going to change lives, Emily, more than you know. 3 weeks later, Emily stood in front of her classroom at Columbia and noticed something different. The class had doubled in size. Students filled every seat, sat in the aisles, stood against the back wall. Some held copies of her mother's pen photo from the courthouse steps. Others wore shirts that said, "Knowledge is power," in her mother's handwriting. Emily said, overwhelmed. This is a lot of people. A student in the front row raised her hand. Professor Carter, we're all from working class backgrounds. We all saw your speech. We all want to learn what you know. Emily looked at the sea of faces, black, brown, white, every accent and background imaginable, all looking at her like she held the keys to their future. Okay, she said, her voice shaking slightly. Let's start with the basics. Contract law is the language of power. Rich people use it to protect themselves and exploit others. We're going to learn it so we can protect ourselves and fight back. She uncapped her mother's pen. First lesson read everything. Yeah, amazing. Every contract, every clause, every piece of fine print. Because somewhere in those words is either your freedom or your chains. Learn to tell the difference. For the next 2 hours, she taught a classroom full of dreamers how to weaponize knowledge. When class ended, students lined up to thank her. Some cried, others just shook her hand like she'd given them something precious. The last student in line was a girl who couldn't have been more than 19 wearing a fast food uniform under her winter coat. Professor Carter, she said nervously, I work at McDonald's. I dropped out of high school because my family needed money. But I got my GED and I'm trying to get into college, and everyone tells me I'm not smart enough and I should just accept where I am. The girl's eyes filled with tears. But watching you fight back, it made me think maybe they're wrong. Maybe I can do this. Emily pulled her into a hug. They're wrong. You're smart enough. You're brave enough. You're already doing it. The girl cried on her shoulder for a full minute, then pulled back and smiled through tears. Thank you for showing us it's possible. After she left, Emily sat alone in the empty classroom, thinking about her mother, her father, Richard Blake, Margaret. Everyone who'd fought so she could be standing here. Her phone buzzed. William. The Emily Carter Scholarship just received its 1,000th application. We're going to need a bigger program. Thoughts on expanding to other universities? Emily smiled and typed back, let's do it. Every city, every state, nobody gets left behind because they're poor. William's response was immediate. That's my girl. Board meeting next week to discuss expansion. Also, your consulting contract came through. 6 figures for contract review on our new acquisition. You earned it. Emily stared at the number. 6 figures for doing what she loved, while teaching people who looked like her how to survive in a world designed to keep them down. She walked out of Columbia into December cold past students, studying on benches and rushing to classes, and felt something she'd never felt before. Peace, not because the fight was over, there would always be more Vanessas, more people who thought being rich meant being better, but because she'd proven to herself that she could fight and win without losing who she was. Her phone rang, her father. Hey, Dad. Hey, baby. Just saw you on the news again. They're calling you the voice of working class America. How's that feel? Emily laughed. Terrifying and amazing. How are you feeling? Good. Great, actually. The new medication is working. Doctor says I might be able to come off oxygen soon. His voice was stronger than she'd heard in years. Emily, your mama would be so proud. I wish she could see this. I think she can, Emily said quietly. Yeah, me too, he paused. I love you, baby. You know that, right? I know, Dad. I love you too. After they hung up, Emily stood on the Columbia steps and looked at the city spreading before her. Millions of lives, millions of stories, millions of people fighting their own battles. Somewhere out there was the next Emily Carter, the next kid working 2 jobs and studying at night and being told they weren't smart enough, weren't good enough, should know their place. And now that kid had proof that knowing your place meant nothing compared to knowing your worth. Emily touched her mother's pen in her pocket and made a promise. She'd keep fighting, keep teaching, keep proving that the quiet people in the room, the waitresses, the janitors, the maids, the invisible workers who made the world run weren't invisible because they were worthless. They were invisible because powerful people were terrified of what would happen if they ever learned their own power. Well, Emily had learned at hers, and she was teaching an army. 6 months later, Emily stood on a stage at the first annual Emily Carter Scholarship Awards ceremony, looking at 500 working-class students who'd won full-ride scholarships to universities across America. Her father sat in the front row, healthy enough to walk without oxygen, crying proud tears. William sat beside him, having funded the entire program with more money than Emily could comprehend. Margaret Blake sat on her other side, running a foundation in Richard's name to help families of corporate crime victims. And Grace stood backstage, managing the chaos with the efficiency of someone who'd helped Emily survive a war. Emily stepped up to the microphone. 3 years ago, she said, I was a waitress. I got wine thrown in my face by a billionaire's wife who called me illiterate and stupid. She thought she was putting me in my place. Instead, she started a revolution. The audience applauded. These scholarships aren't charity. They're investments in people who've been systematically underestimated their entire lives. People who work while others party. People who study while others sleep. People who've been told they don't belong in rooms full of rich people with fancy degrees. Emily's voice strengthened. But here's what I learned. You don't need permission to be smart. You don't need money to be powerful. You just need knowledge and the courage to use it. My mother taught me that with a fountain pen and a dream. I'm teaching you the same thing with scholarships and truth. She looked at the 500 faces staring at her with hope and determination. So go out there and be brilliant, be loud, be unapologetic about taking up space in rooms that weren't built for you. And when someone tries to put you back in your place, Emily smiled, remind them that your place is wherever the hell you decide it is. The auditorium erupted. Students stood cheering, crying, believing for the first time that maybe they really could win. After the ceremony, Emily found her father outside looking at the Manhattan skyline. You did it, baby, he said softly. You changed the world. I just told the truth, Dad. Sometimes that's all it takes. He hugged her tightly. Your mama's watching. I know she is. And she's so damn proud. Emily held her father and watched the sun set over the city where she'd once been invisible. She wasn't invisible anymore. None of them were. The quiet girl in the corner had learned to roar, and her voice had become a chorus of thousands. Vanessa Grant rotted in federal prison. Her appeals exhausted, her money meaningless, her power gone. Richard Blake's memory lived on in scholarships and second chances. William Grant rebuilt his company with integrity instead of ruthlessness. And Emily Carter taught contract law to students who would become the next generation of fighters, the ones who'd use knowledge as a weapon against anyone who thought being poor meant being powerless. 3 years later, Emily published her first book, The Waitress Who Read Contracts, A Guide to Fighting Back Against Power. It became a bestseller. 5 years later, the Emily Carter Foundation had given full scholarships to over 10,000 students. 10 years later, those students were lawyers, the CEOs, politicians, professors, all of them fighting to make sure the next generation didn't have to survive the same battles they did. And through it all, Emily kept her mother's fountain pen on her desk as a reminder. Knowledge is power. Dignity is earned through courage, not birth. And no one, absolutely no one, gets to tell you who you're allowed to be. Emily Carter had been a waitress who dared to read a contract. Now she was a professor, an author, a revolutionary who'd proven that the most dangerous person in any room isn't the one with the most money. It's the one who refuses to stay silent. Language is power. Knowledge is dignity. And the girl who once served wine to billionaires now taught thousands how to bring empires to their knees. One contract, one clause, one act of defiance at a time.